So I'm going to start with a story I told a while ago, one of the first stories I worked on. It's originally from Grimm's fairy tales, and it's about how the moon was created and put in the sky. There were once 4 young ladies who were very good at sewing. So good that they were commissioned to make an enormous tapestry as big as from floor to ceiling and as wide as a whole hall. And in this beautiful tapestry would have to be a lot of blue for the sky. Now at that time, blue was difficult to get hold of, especially a good blue. And when they heard that a distant country had a beautiful indigo blue, they wanted to go and see the dye and buy the dye and bring it back for their thread. So off they went, the 4 young ladies together. They set off out of their kingdom down into the next kingdom. Now they were very careful when they were travelling, because in their land at night there was no moon, there was no silvery light, there was no light to light the pathways for half the month. So they were used to getting to somewhere safe every night. Now they'd been travelling for 3 or 4 days, and they'd been going up this valley, and they wanted to just get over the pass before the end of the day, but they were pushing it. The light was coming down fast, and they were worried that they'd be in complete darkness. So they were getting faster and faster and faster, but the horses were so slow and it was so difficult, and the last bit was rocky, and they went through the opening at the top of the mountain, just going over to go down the other side, and they thought it would be so dark and difficult. But when they got through that bit of the mountain and came out of the other side of the little vale, there was a gentle glowing light, something they'd never seen before. And they were attracted to it, and they veered towards it. And there stood balancing in the tree was a great big round circular light. And they stood in awe, looking at each other saying, "What's that?" And at that point, a man on his cart came through, and they said, "What is that thing?" And he looked at them and he laughed and said, "It's the moon! Have you never seen a moon before?" "Oh, well, our mayor bought us the moon, and it's hung up in the tree. We all pay £1 a month for it." "Oh, well, it's quite expensive, but it's really good. Look at the light." And chuckling and giggling, off he went past the young women, and they looked at each other and thought, a light in a tree hung up. And one said, "My dad's got a big tree." And the one next to her said, "We've got some rope in the back of here." And the third one said, "I could get a cart." And the fourth one said, "You know, I'm so good at climbing trees." So in minutes they decided to steal the moon. Well, they all did their certain tasks. One climbed, one collected the rope and threw it up. The third ran off to get a cart. And soon they were carefully lowering the great lamp, the moon, down onto the back of the cart. And they'd forgotten the indigo, and they were back up the hill and on their way home. Well, as the young lady who said her father had a big tree, when they hung the moon in the tree, wow, did it make a difference! The entire land seemed to be illuminated. The pixies on the far side of the valley put on their red coats and danced in the lamplight. People celebrated. All of a sudden, people were going out and having parties in the evening. Oh, it made a difference. Time went past, and everybody had paid for the moon, and they got used to it. But then the first young lady died, and in her will she wanted her quarter of the moon buried with her. And as the other young ladies died, that's what they requested too. And in the end, the 4 parts of the lamp moon were buried underground with the dead. Now, up till this point, the dead had always been in the dark. But when the lamp was buried, it came together and made a big circle in the land of the dead. And suddenly the land of the dead was lit. And the dead woke up and started to stomp around. They started to go out. They went to the pub. They had a drink. And what happens when you go to the pub and have a drink? Especially when you're a lot of old people. They couldn't hear each other properly, and they started getting grumpy, and then they started shouting, and they were arguing all the time. And it was a great big noise. Now the noise from down below, the land of the dead, went up, 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 to the heavens above, where St. Peter was sitting. And he heard the noise. And it sounded like an enormous army preparing to invade the heavens. So St. Peter stood up and he called the angels and the archangels and the sub-angels and the below sub-angels and the smaller little ones, and told them to arm themselves and get to the gates and be ready to defend heaven. And they did. And they stood and they waited. And nothing happened. And nothing happened. And nothing happened. And so St. Peter got even more cross. And he stomped out of heaven. And he stomped all the way to the land of the dead down below. And he marched into the land of the dead. And there he found what was going on, that light. And he looked at all the dead arguing. And he drew himself up to the height of St. Peter and he said, "You are dead. And you should be lying down, not wandering round. You are dead and you know it. Go back to your graves." And with that he took the lamp back up to heaven. And he hung the lamp in heaven, where we all can see it, for it is the moon. But he wanted everybody to be more careful this time. So once a month it disappears for a bit and comes out so that we know how important the moon is, and so that we remember to be careful. And that is my story of how the moon was made, and St. Peter had a little hand in it. Thank you.